it's an honor and it's a real pleasure because of all the other, people they had, Jimmy Stewart, you name all the big stars, and then to include me.
The lights of Studio 4 burned hot that night. Cameras rolled, cue cards flashed, and there he was, Dean Martin, the king of cool, leaning on the piano, glass in hand, grinning like the room belonged to him. The audience laughed as he stumbled through his lines. "Well, don't worry, just like I promised you," he slurred softly. "I'm only having one drink." The crowd roared. It was the routine everyone expected. The boozy charm, the quick wit, the wink that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." But this time, the laughter felt off. The timing wasn't sharp. His eyes were unfocused. The jokes came slower, the pauses longer. Somewhere between the punchlines, he looked tired. Not the playful kind of tired, but the kind that lives behind the eyes of someone who's lost too much. In the control room, a producer whispered, "Cut to commercial," but Dean waved him off, slurring, "Let me finish." He wasn't performing anymore. He was pleading. "I feel sorry for you people that don't drink," he said, voice cracking slightly. "Because when you wake up in the morning, that's as good as you're going to feel all day." The crowd laughed again, uncertainly this time. What had once been a punchline now sounded like surrender. A lifetime of tragedy, loss, and reinvention had led to this single, fragile moment. The night Dean Martin's mask finally slipped. He wasn't the invincible crooner anymore. He was just a man, standing under bright lights, trying to remember who he used to be. This is the story of how Dean Martin built the legend, lived the illusion, and quietly fell apart in front of millions. One smile, one song, and one drink at a time. Long before the tuxedos, martinis, and Las Vegas lights, there was a boy named Dino Paul Crocetti growing up in a cramped apartment above a shoemaker's shop in Steubenville, Ohio. The year was 1917, and the world was still rough-edged from the Great War. His parents, Gaetano and Angela, had left Italy chasing opportunity, only to find poverty waiting with open arms. Their two-room home had no running water. They shared an outhouse with 3 families. The smell of coal smoke filled the air, and the only music was the clatter of steel mills down by the river. Dean didn't speak English until he was 5. When he started school, the other kids mocked his accent, his clothes, his strange lunches packed by a mother who barely spoke the language. His older brother, Bill, sometimes walked him to class just to translate. Dino learned early that if he didn't laugh at himself first, someone else would. Humor became his armor. Cool detachment became his shield. By 13, he was done with school. He told his mother he'd find real work, and he meant it. He started running bootleg whiskey across the Ohio River at night for 50 cents a trip. It was dangerous work. River patrols searched boats, rival smugglers stole cargo, and one mistake could get him shot. But Dino was quick, quiet, invisible. Soon he was delivering bets for bookies, polishing shoes for rich men, and stocking grocery shelves before dawn. The boy who would one day sing "That's Amore" spent his teenage years counting coins and avoiding cops. He learned to read people's eyes before their mouths moved, a skill that later made him one of the smoothest performers in history. He worked the steel mills at 15, lied about his age to earn a few extra dollars, and came home covered in soot, his body aching. He once told a reporter, "Easy does it wasn't a motto, it was survival." I'd already lived the hard way. In the early 1930s, America was broke, angry, and hungry for distraction. For young men like Dino, fighting wasn't a sport, it was an escape. He called himself Kid Crochet and fought in makeshift rings under flickering lights. He had no manager, no gloves worth mentioning, and no reason to quit. Between 1932 and 1936, he fought 36 bouts, winning 25. His nose broke, his lips split, his knuckles shattered. The pain never left him. Crowds loved him because he fought like he lived, silent, stoic, unflinching. The crooked grin that would one day melt hearts came from nerve damage after a punch to the jaw. His half-smile wasn't an affectation, it was a scar. In 1936, at just 19, he fought a brutal match at Steubenville Memorial Auditorium. Midway through, his opponent landed a rabbit punch to the temple. Dino fell like a rag doll. The crowd went silent. He wasn't breathing. Ringside medics rushed in and worked for 5 long minutes to bring him back. When he finally coughed, blood poured from his mouth. He spent 3 days in the hospital, memory blurred, the doctor warning that another hit could kill him. That was it. The fighter was done. The doctor's bill was $470, money his family didn't have. When he recovered, Dino vowed never to take another blow for someone else's amusement. He traded gloves for microphones, bruises for applause. Somewhere deep down, though, the rhythm of those fights stayed with him. His timing on stage, the pauses, the jabs, the punchlines, was learned not from comedy, but from combat. By 17, Dino was singing in smoke-choked clubs across Ohio, his voice raw but rich, not trained, but tempered by hardship. He mimicked the smooth harmonies of the Mills Brothers, practicing between shifts, learning how to make rhythm sound like ease. His tone wasn't polished, but it was honest, soaked in late nights and cheap whiskey. In one of Steubenville's cigar stores, a front for the Scala crime family's gambling ring, he worked as a dealer by night and a singer by request when tension ran high. The mobsters liked him because he didn't flinch. He sang softly as men exchanged cash and whispers, his calm voice cutting through the smoke like a lullaby for danger. They said his singing could calm a trigger finger. Twice, federal agents raided the joint, and twice, Dino slipped out the back, his laughter echoing through the alley as he ran. He lived on adrenaline and charm, a combination that would define his entire career. In 1939, fate intervened. Cleveland band leader Sammy Watkins heard him sing one night and offered him a gig at $200 a week, more money than Dino had ever imagined. But Watkins had one condition. "Crocetti," he said, "is too ethnic. You'll be Dean Martin now." Dean nodded. Reinvention came easily to him. He'd been reinventing himself since childhood. From Italian kid to fighter, from fighter to singer, from survivor to entertainer. As Dean Martin, his voice began to find its identity. He didn't push it. He let words hang, linger, breathe. His style was conversational, like a man humming a tune for himself that the audience was lucky enough to overhear. When others strained for applause, Dean sang like he didn't need it. That restraint drew people in. Gamblers, gangsters, lonely waitresses, all leaning closer, caught in the gravity of his ease. Behind the effortless tone was a lifetime of control. He'd learned to never show strain, not when bootlegging whiskey, not when ducking bullets, not when dodging insults. Each note was a study in survival disguised as serenity. When people said his voice felt cool, they weren't wrong. But that coolness came from fire he never let anyone see. July 25, 1946, Atlantic City's 500 Club. A humid night, a restless crowd, and a last-minute cancellation left a hole in the lineup. Dean Martin was set to croon. Jerry Lewis, the manic comedian, to follow. But backstage chaos turned into improvisation. Jerry crashed Dean's act mid-song, flinging pies and ad-libbing nonsense. Dean fired back with smooth one-liners. Within minutes, the audience was howling. Two men who couldn't be more different had collided, and together they sparked something no one had ever seen before. Within months, Martin and Lewis became the hottest act in America. They embodied post-war optimism, laughter after years of loss, friendship after chaos. They headlined NBC's Colgate Comedy Hour and made 16 box office smashing films for Paramount. In 7 years, they earned the studio over $50 million, the modern equivalent of $500 million. Dean was the anchor, Jerry the storm. Dean's calm, unhurried rhythm gave Jerry's manic energy somewhere to land. Their chemistry felt accidental, but it was surgical. Jerry needed to be adored. Dean needed to look like he didn't care. Together, they made madness look effortless. Off stage, though, the balance was cracking. Jerry began to see himself as the genius, the director, the architect of their success. He rewrote sketches, adjusted lighting, even told Dean when to pause. Dean, raised on independence and instinct, began to suffocate. The press painted him as lazy, detached, but those close to him saw a man quietly withdrawing from a circus that no longer made him laugh. The breaking point came in Vegas, 1954. Backstage at the Sands, Jerry accused Dean of stealing the spotlight. Dean's response was simple: "You can have it." Jerry swung. The punch split Dean's lip. Minutes later, they walked on stage together, blood still fresh, and performed like nothing happened. The audience never knew. They were professionals, even when they hated each other. By 1956, it was over. Hollywood or Bust was their final film, shot in icy silence. 10 years of laughter ended with a brief handshake and a single press release. Jerry wept at the premiere. Dean didn't attend. When reporters asked why, he shrugged and said, "I don't need the pain." The world mourned the breakup. Critics predicted Dean's career was finished, that he'd fade without Jerry's chaos. But Dean knew better. For the first time in a decade, he was free to be himself again. No pratfalls, no punchlines, just that cool, controlled voice that had carried him through darker places than Hollywood ever could. He walked away from the partnership with no bitterness, no explanation, and no plan, just quiet confidence. Within months, he'd find himself in a recording booth, singing a little tune that would change everything. Months before the split from Jerry Lewis, Dean had quietly recorded a song called "Memories Are Made of This." No one expected it to change everything. But when it hit the airwaves, it spread like smoke through post-war America. 5 weeks at #1. 3 million copies sold. Housewives hummed it while folding laundry. Soldiers wrote its lyrics in letters home. It wasn't loud or operatic. It was smooth, intimate, like a secret whispered across a crowded bar. That record didn't just make him famous. It gave him freedom. Over the next decade, Dean refined the art of understatement. He didn't belt like Sinatra or charm like Crosby. He floated. Sway, Inamorata, and Dream. With Dean became masterclasses in restraint. He turned pauses into punctuation, laughter into melody. His phrasing felt like conversation. His confidence, hypnotic. When he sang about love, he wasn't pleading. He was reminiscing. He made heartbreak sound easy. That was his genius. He sang like a man who'd already survived everything he was warning you about. But his biggest hit, That's Amore, became both his anthem and his albatross. He despised its caricatured Italian lines, "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie," but audiences demanded it every night. He sang it smiling, though inside he loathed how it turned him into a walking stereotype. Still, he knew what it bought him. "I sang it 1,000 times," he once joked, because it paid for the golf, the girls, the quiet. Dean's relaxed image became a national symbol of calm during a decade of atomic fear and Cold War tension. He was the man who never panicked, who never shouted, who could make an entire room feel like they were sharing a drink with an old friend. Behind that cool exterior, though, was a survivor who had fought for every ounce of peace he projected. His humor masked exhaustion. His serenity hid the steel forged in years of poverty, boxing, and hustling. Dean Martin wasn't lazy. He was precise. Every smirk, every shrug, every effortless note was choreography. A performance so flawless, it looked like none at all. And that illusion of effortlessness would soon make him one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. In 1959, Dean shattered his lightweight image with Rio Bravo. Playing Dude, a washed-up drunk deputy clawing his way back from addiction, he delivered a performance that felt almost too real. Critics called it raw, aching, and uncomfortably human. For the first time, audiences saw the real man behind the martini glass, a performer who understood the quiet desperation of a life lived between laughter and pain. Then came the Rat Pack: Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford, and Dean, 5 kings of cool ruling Las Vegas as if it were their playground. By night, they performed to packed audiences. By dawn, they filmed Ocean's 11. The sets blurred into the lounges, the scripts into improvised chaos. Cigarette smoke, sequined gowns, tumbling dice, the world watched in envy. Dean was the anchor amid the storm, unbothered, magnetic, the man who could silence a room with a grin. Behind the scenes, the lines between character and man began to blur. The drunk act that had once been playful now defined him. Audiences believed the glass in his hand was filled with scotch, but insiders knew it was apple juice. His timing was perfect because he rehearsed it to imperfection. Every stumble, every drawl, every late entrance was deliberate. He had mastered the art of making control look like carelessness. When scandals came, he turned them into gold. In 1958, when the IRS accused him of hiding $250,000 in foreign royalties, he didn't flinch. The next year, he launched Dino cigarettes, packaging his silhouette on every box. "If they think I'm smoking my money," he joked, "they're not wrong." Only Dean could take a tax scandal and turn it into a fashion accessory. By the mid-60s, he was earning $10,000 a week at the Copa, outpacing even Sinatra in both pay and mystique. He headlined Vegas residencies, sold out New York shows, and recorded hit after hit. His image wasn't just cool, it was armor. It protected him from chaos, fame, and the cracks starting to form inside. To the world, he was untouchable. To his friends, he was still that quiet kid from Steubenville, the one who fought his way out of poverty by pretending he never had to fight at all. And soon, he'd wear that armor on television screens across America, where the legend of the King of Cool would reach its final glittering form. By 1965, Dean Martin was more than a singer or actor. He was a cultural comfort. NBC offered him one of the most generous contracts in television history, $34 million for 3 years, with a clause no one had ever dared ask for. No rehearsals required. He'd show up minutes before air, flash that grin, and turn chaos into charm. The Dean Martin Show wasn't just a variety show. It was a weekly escape into warmth, laughter, and effortless cool. The format was loose and unpredictable. One moment, Dean would croon, "Everybody loves somebody." The next, he'd wander off script to flirt with guests or toss cue cards into the crowd. Frank Sinatra, Lucille Ball, and Bob Hope popped in like old friends. America tuned in, week after week, not for polish, but for presence. The whiskey glass in his hand was apple juice, the slur an act of genius, a way of humanizing perfection in an age obsessed with it. Then came the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts. For a decade, the MGM Grand became the church of comedy. Stars from every corner of Hollywood sat under Dean's amused gaze. Sinatra, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Stewart, Muhammad Ali, and let themselves be roasted in front of millions. The jokes were savage, but affectionate. Dean was the high priest of mockery, sipping scotch and laughing like the world's most relaxed ringmaster. Behind the smile, though, fatigue was creeping in. The endless act of playing the unflappable host took its toll. Years of pretending to be careless left him restless. The laughter at the roasts echoed hollow when the cameras stopped rolling. Still, Dean kept the illusion alive. America needed its icon of ease, and he gave them one. By the 1970s, he was untouchable, a symbol of nostalgia in an era of noise. In homes across the country, families watched him each week, believing that somewhere, life could still be that simple, that graceful, that easy. But behind closed doors, Dean Martin was beginning to slow down. The long nights, the heavy smoking, the private loneliness, all of it was catching up. The man who once defined effortless living was now quietly running out of breath. Dean Martin's personal life was a study in contradictions, laughter in public, silence in private. 3 marriages, 8 children, countless lovers, and yet he was always alone. His second wife, Jean Beager, was the love of his life, the steady anchor to his restless soul. Together, they had 3 children, including his favorite, Dean Paul Martin, Dino, to everyone who knew him. Dino was everything his father admired: confident, handsome, daring. After a short stint in acting and even fronting a rock band, he found his true calling in aviation. In 1980, he joined the Air National Guard as a fighter pilot. Dean bragged about him constantly, calling him the real hero in the family. But on March 21, 1987, that pride turned to horror. During a routine training flight, Dino's F-4C Phantom vanished from radar in a snowstorm near Mount San Gorgonio. The wreckage wasn't found for 6 days. There were no survivors. For Dean, time stopped. Friends said he aged 10 years overnight. He stopped smiling, stopped showing up. The apple juice that had once been part of the act turned into real whiskey. His legendary composure dissolved into quiet despair. Shows were canceled, calls went unanswered. He walked through his Beverly Hills home like a ghost. In 1988, Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. tried to bring him back with a reunion tour called Together Again. The idea was to rekindle old magic, to remind the world of their brotherhood. The tour kicked off in Oakland to sold-out crowds, but Dean lasted only a week. He left without explanation. Publicly, they said he was sick. Privately, his friends knew. Grief had hollowed him out. He simply had nothing left to give. In his later years, Dean would sit alone for hours, watching reruns of The Dean Martin Show. Sometimes he laughed, sometimes he didn't. The man who'd once made the world believe he could glide through life untouched had finally met something he couldn't outdrink, outjoke, or outsing: loss. By the 1990s, Dean Martin had become a living shadow of his former self, frail, quiet, and reflective. Decades of chain smoking had shredded his lungs. When doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer in 1993, they offered surgery and chemotherapy that might extend his life. Dean declined both. "No more cutting," he told friends softly. "I've lived enough." He quit smoking that year, but it was too late. The illness progressed quickly. Sinatra visited him often, trying to coax him into singing again. "One more night, Dino," he'd say. Dean would just smile faintly. "Frank," he'd whisper, "I'm tired." By Christmas 1995, his body had given out. At 3:30 a.m. on December 25th, Dean Martin died in his Beverly Hills home from acute respiratory failure. He was 78. Las Vegas dimmed its lights for 8 minutes, one for each decade of his life. Sinatra called him "my brother." Jerry Lewis, performing on tour when he heard the news, broke down on stage. The world didn't just lose a star, it lost the illusion of effortlessness itself. After his death, the truth of his genius emerged. The drunk act that millions had mocked or adored wasn't recklessness, it was theater. Dean had used humor to hide discipline, alcohol to disguise precision. He'd invested millions in Las Vegas real estate and quietly built an empire worth over $30 million. He'd outsmarted everyone who ever underestimated him. Dean Martin's life was a perfect contradiction. Humor wrapped around heartbreak, chaos built on control, detachment born from discipline. He didn't just embody cool, he invented it. And on that unforgettable night when he could barely stand under the bright studio lights, the mask slipped for just a moment. For the first time, the world saw not Dino the drunk, but Dean Martin, the man, the father, the fighter, and finally understood that his ease had never been effortless. It had been earned, one hard, lonely note at a time. If you enjoyed uncovering the real Dean Martin behind the myth, hit subscribe, because every legend hides a truth, and every truth deserves its spotlight.